Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our first Lenten lecture of 2019 for the St. Basil's Lenten Lecture Series. And what a great topic to start off with. Dr. Randa Anderson, who is very, very close to me for a multitude of reasons, not just because her boys were in my Goya, some of my best altar boys. So big shout out to Mitri and Elias. But she was a great friend of mine when I was an associate pastor at St. Peter of Paul, and a great research within the Orthodox Christian Counseling Network. She is a gem, she is a treasure, she is a resource that I'm hoping that you all will be able to utilize, not just tonight for her presentation, but throughout your life in Orthodoxy, because she has a lot to offer on many, many levels. She's going to be speaking tonight about having a great Lent at any age. And so I would like for everybody, so that they can see the presentation once you've finished eating, to try to fill up these front tables so that you can have a better view of the presentation on the projection screen. So if you have finished eating, please fill up these closed tables. Don't be afraid of being at the table right next to the computer. You're not going to hurt anything. And welcome Dr. Randa, who is going to give us a fantastic presentation.
Thank you, Father Dimitri. Wait, do I have this right? Yep. Which way do you want me to? Does it matter?
It doesn't matter because the camera sees.
Ah, okay. Gotcha. You're going to edit this, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. It's nice to be here. Father already encouraged you to move forward, and I do appreciate that, actually, because although this is a Lenten lecture, I actually would like to have a lot of discussion, because I think we all have a lot to share with each other about our Lenten experience, and I certainly am coming tonight with lots of ideas, but I'm sure you all have great ideas, too, about how to have a great Lent. A little bit about me, like Father Dimitri said, I'm a clinical psychologist, and I work with children, adolescents, and adults through the Orthodox Christian Counseling Institute. But my doctorate is actually in developmental psychology, which means that in graduate school many moons ago, I studied human development across the lifespan. And there's nothing a developmental psychologist likes more than to talk about stages and ages of life. And so I thought applying that to how we approach Great Lent would be useful, because I do think, although we all have unique challenges in approaching Great Lent, some of those I think can be kind of grouped based on where you are, what stage of life you're in. So that's what we're going to do today. We do. The kids are staying, so that's good. It's great. Are they going to participate too? So throughout the evening, oh, where's my? All right, it's behind me. But will I be able to see it there? Only, yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, this is going to be a challenge. I need to see it too, so I know when to tell you to move forward. Okay. Sorry.
No problem. We can adjust. We shimmy this way.
Maybe if I go this way. All right, sorry.
No problem.
So throughout the evening, what I'd like to try and do is address the particular challenges for these stages that I have up here. So I was thinking college students and single young professionals, parents in the home with children of all different ages, and then empty nesters. Does that cover it for pretty much everyone in the room, you think? We look like a pretty diverse group here. And I'm excited that there's kids in the audience too. We don't really get that at St. Peter and Paul. So I will try and adapt on the fly to include the kids in the presentation tonight too. One of my goals tonight is to be very, very practical and to offer ideas and suggestions and encouragements that you can take home and start working on tonight. There are far more people out there that are more qualified to talk about all the theological underpinnings of Great Lent than myself. But I think Father Dimitri invited me because part of what I do as a psychologist is help people through their challenges. And so that is what we're going to do tonight. Now, someone passed out for you paper and pen, and what I would like to do is throughout the evening, there are going to be times when I'm going to ask you to write some things down. Now, what you write down is just for you, all right? I'm not going to call on you and ask you to share it. You don't have to show it to anyone. It's just for you. So consider those note pages kind of your little journal for the evening, and then you can take it home and use it. All right, so let's do that. All right, so while there are unique challenges at each stage of life, I think there are some common principles that that everyone can address, no matter where you are in life. And the first is that Lent is centered on 3 pillars, and that is prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. And I suggest we really work on trying to have a balance of all 3, because I think often we get really caught up in the food, but I really think trying to balance all 3 is important. And really, what maybe other than the youngest among us or the oldest, everyone can do something along those lines. Second, I would encourage you to start where you are and work on increasing and improving from that place during Great Lent. So, many of you probably know there are guidelines that the church puts forth for how to participate in Lent. But these will feel very, very severe if you just jump right in and try and do everything right out of the gate. So start where you are and increase. So if you are used to coming to church maybe once or twice a month, come every week. If maybe you catch a salutations once, try and do 2 or 3 on a Friday night. Obviously you're here, so you know about pre-sanctifieds. Great that you're here at the first one. I hope you keep coming throughout Lent. Start where you are and try and increase. And then another thing to keep in mind is to think of your Lenten practices as both personal and communal. For example, we can increase our personal prayer life by praying ourselves at home. But we can also attend more worship services, and there are plenty throughout Great Lent in which to do that. And I think it's an important point because I think often we think about Lent as our own personal activity, right? What we fast from, what we give up for Lent. But really, that's not how the church looks at it. It's a communal activity that we all share in together. And last, maybe most importantly, is KISS. What does that stand for?
Keep it simple, stupid.
Keep it simple, stupid. Exactly. Don't overcomplicate Lent. How many of us do that? I am a cook. I love to cook. I love to try new recipes. But really, that's not what Lent is about. It's not combing the web to find the best, lentil soup recipe or something new to please our families. It's really about keeping it simple so that there is more time for prayer and for almsgiving. So throughout the evening tonight, I'm going to point back to these basic principles. Okay. Right. As I said, I wanted some discussion. So here's the first thing I thought would be helpful to talk about, and that's almsgiving. I think I want to start there because, like I was saying before, I feel like almsgiving kind of gets forgotten. We focus a lot on fasting. Certainly, we work on prayer and reading more and coming to more services. But, you know, doing good works, doing works of charity sometimes gets a little forgotten during Great Lent. So I ask you, what makes it a challenge at each stage of life? Like, what makes it hard, say, for a college student to do works of charity, offer alms during Lent? Anyone?
Are you broke as a college student?
You're broke. Absolutely. And unless you're, you know, part of those families that bought their way into college, if you heard about that. But yeah, money, resources are scarce, right? What else? What about for families with kids? Finding the time can be a huge challenge, absolutely. It's hard to schedule a Saturday to go work in a soup kitchen when you're juggling Little League and gymnastics and all those things that our kids like to participate in. What about for empty nesters or older adults? What makes it challenging?
I was saying he's supposed to give an example.
I
It's obviously his.
He looks young. Yeah.
So you might want to repeat the question.
Sure. Yeah, I see a hand back there. We'll just take the heat off of him and let her answer. Okay.
It's been a long night.
Maybe getting a ride to the location, or
Exactly.
maybe help.
Exactly. Those were the things that came to my mind as well. Poor health, limited mobility can make it really difficult to go and volunteer your time. All right.
What about for kids?
Yeah, what about for kids? What makes it hard?
Yeah, can we talk?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love it if you would.
Okay.
What makes it hard to do good works, to do charity?
I don't know.
Think about it. When was the last time you did something?
PlayStation? Xbox, excuse me.
One.
Minecraft takes over the world and it's too hard to get away from it.
Minecraft is not cool.
Boys, you've done charity. You know what charity is? Like, you went to
By the
feed my
time you
starving
know
children,
about a
right?
video game, it's old.
I know.
So
No,
what do you,
Minecraft is 2017.
See? He said it's
what do you mean?
Sorry, it's that other one, Fortnite now, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
What makes it hard to do good things, Robert?
Well, but I don't
What gets in the way?
Sure. What is your name?
Peter.
Peter.
We're still developing, and sometimes we have like sports we need to play,
Right.
and like we really like them, and we don't really want to move it out of our schedule.
That's right. So sometimes other priorities.
Now the big comes perfect
I love the honesty. Sometimes other priorities get in the way. And actually that's not just for kids. I think that's for grown-ups too. And the point about still developing, I think, is also spot on because you're still developing, you can't drive a car yet, can you? And so now you're reliant on your parents to take you to wherever it is you might want to volunteer, if it's that type of thing. Yeah, great. So I think when and we'll talk more about this, but I think when we consider almsgiving, we need to think about time, talent, and treasure. And at certain points of life, you have more or less of each of those things. And we'll talk more about that. All right. So you can move on. Great. All right. So I have many ideas for charitable giving during Lent. But before we talk about them, what I'd like to do, because Lent is also a time of self-examination and reflection, I'd like us to think about our spending habits in general and really do some thinking about that. So you all have paper and pen, so now is the time for you to make sure you have some in front of you so you can write some things down. The boys over here need paper and pen. Do you guys get an allowance? Do you guys get an allowance or have any money of your own?
Get it $100.
Yeah, right.
$100 a day, man. Wow, that is.
Great life you can meet.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have a pen.
All right. All right. Well, you get those. In the meantime, again, I want us to reflect on our own spending habits. So think about if someone looked over your checkbook or credit card bill, what would they say your spending priorities are? If you tallied up the number of different places where you spend your money each month, about how many do you think there would be? And do you ever look around your home and think to yourself, how did I get so much stuff? All right, me? Yes, okay. All right, but here's the exercise. So those are things to reflect on. But what I really want you to do, here's the exercise. I'd like you to write down, other than your mortgage or rent, write down what you think your top 10 monthly expenses are. Okay, so take a minute and do that. And when you're done with that, I want you to note if any of them are actually non-essential items like restaurants and entertainment, travel, that kind of thing. And so take a second and do that. You guys writing down what you spend your allowance on?
Yeah.
I drew an arrow that day.
Yeah, right? Yes, children, a ginormous expense. Wait till they go to college.
I got 2.
Okay, when you're done, you can look up.
I'm helping with the slides.
Okay. So everyone's written their top 10 expenses and noted if they're non-essential or not. Okay. All right, so actually part 2 of this exercise is actually going to be your homework. But you don't have to turn it in, so, you know, it's up to you. It's on our system if you do it or not. What I'd like you to do, because I think this is an important exercise for all of us, and I'm only suggesting things that I have tried myself, so I will share you how shocking it was for me, but what I'd like you to do is to compare your spending on your non-essential categories, again, like restaurants, entertainment, the 10th pair of shoes you bought last month, whatever. Compare that to what you offer in your stewardship and other charitable giving. Okay, really look at those numbers. And if you really want to do a careful analysis, calculate what the percentage of your charitable spending really is of your net income, right? Like we know biblically we're supposed to tithe 10%. Have you ever really stopped and calculated that? And even beyond that, if that sounds complicated or too intimidating because you don't want to be shocked, look at your combined cable, internet, and phone bill and think about how that relates, you know, how does that compare to what your charitable giving and what your stewardship is. Then the last thing you're going to ask yourself is, are you really spending your non-essential, you're doing your non-essential spending on items that you really want to? You know, does your spending align with your values? And I think that this is a question we have to ask ourselves throughout our lives. Even a college student without a lot of money, you know, we're an older adult on a fixed income. How are we spending our money? Okay. Oh, you've got the mouse now. I guess if I put it up here, I can do it myself. Okay. All right. Sound familiar? Go to Walmart to buy shampoo. For me, it's Target. Spend $150 and forget the shampoo. Yes, that is me. Does it sound familiar to you guys? Yeah? Okay. I think that, you know, a lot of us have closets that are stuffed full. We have drawers that have those little knickknacks and things that we don't really need, but hey, we bought it on sale, so you know, why not have it? I think our homes are filled with too much stuff. Here's what your St. Basil had to say about all the stuff we have. The bread in our cupboard belongs to the hungry man. The coat hanging unused belongs to the one who needs it. The shoes rotting in our closet belong to the one who has no shoes. And the money we hoard belongs to the poor. And guys over there, I'm pretty sure St. Basil would also say the toys you never play with belong to the poor child who has no toys, right? Yeah. I bet you have some toys that you don't play with. But if you don't, that's great. If you've given them away already, that's awesome. So I think we can look at all that stuff around our house and think about what we really could be sharing with someone else. Okay. All right. Yep. All right. So here's some ideas for almsgiving that are more than just write a check. All right. You could remember the question about how many different places you spend your money. You could eliminate 3 well-trafficked vendors that usually get your expendable cash, right? So if you're one who likes to hit the Starbucks on the way to work and you stop and think about how much Starbucks is actually getting from you every month, if you just didn't do that in a month, how much would you save that could be your offering to charity? In my house, it's the Friday night Lou Malnati's pizza order. So sorry, Lou, no pizza during Lent, and we stopped that. You can also choose 3 alternatives to spending, like pack a lunch instead of eating in the cafeteria. Guys, do you buy your lunch or do you pack a lunch? Excellent. So you're not wasting any money there. Good job. You could walk or carpool. You could have a family game night instead of going to a movie. Better yet, you could go to church instead of going to a movie because there's church so often during Lent. And then another idea is the challenge of 40 days, 40 items. And did I hear your Philipticus was doing this challenge? Yeah.
The whole church is doing that.
Mm-hmm. What?
The whole church is doing it.
The whole parish.
Right. It's a Philipticus initiative, the whole parish is encouraging.
Excellent. Well, see, I already had it written into my talk because I love it so much. So everyone in the house gets a garbage bag, not because it's garbage, but because that is how you're going to collect 1 item a day every day of Lent. So by the time Lent is over, you will have plenty to donate to someone who needs a new pair of jeans or some shoes. Also, I would encourage you to choose 3 causes that you really want to support and focus on those. There are lots of Orthodox causes that are very worthy, but don't forget your local soup kitchen too. Okay? And then lastly, think about how you can donate your time. And I know we just talked about how we have limited time, but think about not just working in a soup kitchen, which is certainly a wonderful thing to do, but also think about doing something like visiting someone who's sick or making a meal for someone, visiting an older adult in a nursing home. How about writing letters? You could be writing a letter to someone in the military, and that's something you guys can do, and you don't need anyone to drive you to do it. You could write a letter to a college student. You could write a letter to your priest and tell him how much you appreciate him. For that matter, you could do.
We have a very active prison ministry here where we write letters to convicts.
Perfect, perfect. And that takes no money, not that much time, and it means a world of good to someone else. Great. I'm curious if, these are ideas that I had, but I'm wondering if anyone wants to share ideas that maybe you do regularly during Lent or other things that might interest the rest of the gang here. Yeah, in the back.
We signed up for Feed Our Starving Children.
Oh, I love Feed My Starving Children. Yeah, we're going Saturday night with Saints Peter and Paul, in fact.
Our parish is going the 23rd.
So the beauty of that is you can do that as a whole family. Or you can go on your own if you don't have a whole family to go with, and it still feels like a very familial, wonderful community thing to do. What else? Yeah.
I know this one family, well, they do this at Christmas time, but you could really do it any time. They're pretty well off, so their kids, of course, get whatever they want during the year for So for Christmas, they don't get gifts. And instead, what she did like a few years when they were younger, married now, she would buy new blankets and then they would go deliver them to the homeless.
Wonderful.
They're like the over lacquer.
Are those blessing bags?
Nope.
No, what are they?
These are
Can
our manna bags that we give out to the homeless. And this is our last bag in this basket.
What is in it?
So what's in it is granola bar, wet naps, toothbrush. Supposed to have a t-shirt.
Yeah, we call those blessing bags. You call them manna bags, but we call them blessing
And
bags,
so
right?
we encourage our parishioners to sign these out, say the agreement, and give them out to people in need.
Wonderful. And so that's also a great community project because you could have your Goyans put the bags together and then parishioners can take them and hand them out. Fabulous. Other ideas?
We'll be packing more soon, so.
Yeah, I don't see too many bags in that basket there. You need to get on that. Good. I love that. Well, and look at where your church is. Right here, you have many people to give to, I'm sure. Just put it outside. Okay. I'm glad you want to feed people. That's awesome. Peter?
I remember seeing this video. This guy, he like does videos on feeding like homeless people on the street,
Uh-huh.
and like he like packs like bags of like water and food,
Mhm.
and then he gives them to people.
Kind of like what Father Dimitri just showed us, right? Yeah, absolutely. Did you have a idea?
No, I
on
was
something? Oh, pointing to them. Got it. Excellent. All right. Thanks, guys. Where'd the young ladies go that were here? I don't know. But I'd like to see them keep up with these guys. They've got good ideas. All right. So hopefully those are some ideas that you can take home and start working on. I am thrilled to see your parish is so engaged already in giving. That's awesome. All right. Okay, so before we move on, I want to address a common concern at pretty much every stage of life, and that has to do with time, right? We're all so busy. We don't feel like we have time for a lot of this Lenten stuff that we're called to do. But are we really that busy? I want to share some facts and figures with you. According to a CNN report, Americans spend over 10 hours a day consuming media via tablets, smartphones, personal computers, multimedia devices, video games, guys, radios, DVDs, DVRs, and TVs. Now, of course, some of this time is essential for work, but much of it is not, right? We're spending a lot of time staring at our screens. Various studies also say that Americans spend an average of 4 hours a day on our mobile devices, our smartphones and iPads. And other studies show that we spend at least 2 hours a day on social media like Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, all those. Yeah,
I don't have a phone.
that's awesome. Don't get one until you're at least 16. Do me a favor, please.
I
Yeah.
don't have a phone. Yeah.
Yay!
My
But
mom
is it-
said I can only get one until like I'm 20 or something.
Well, you might kind of need it before you're 20, but I like the way your mom is thinking. You definitely don't need one now. And I would love to come chat with you about that topic alone sometime, but the point is, we adults spend a lot of time on our phones and our computers. What I'd like you to do now is write down the top 5 ways you think you spend your time on screens throughout the day. Write them down, whether it be email or texting or
Own up to the addiction.
internet or Facebook, whatever you think it is, and then know which are essentially leisure activities and which are actually work. And you guys could do that if you don't have phones. You can do it for computer, video games, Xbox, that kind of thing. How much time every day do you think you're spending? Yeah.
Our mom, like, she only lets us play, like, on Tuesday Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
So it's not a free-for-all. I love your mom. She's a very smart lady, and you should listen to her and do everything she says. See, I knew she was a smart lady. She's already offered answers. It's very important that everyone, not just kids, but grown-ups too, limit our device use. Okay. Once you've written down what you think your top 5, did I say this already? Note which are leisure activities and which are work. Did I say that already? All right. Let me ask you all this. Would we all agree that we waste at least 15 minutes a day on screens? Raise your hand if you think you waste 15 minutes a day on screens. Any screen. Really? He doesn't? He's on a screen right now. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. All right. So, next. So given that we're in agreement that we waste 15 minutes a day, then that means that we can use that 15 minutes a day for something else, right? That is more Lenten and helpful in our lives. So this is advice that I heard Father Chris Metropolis give on an OCN interview, and I thought it was so smart. I wrote it down, and I started actually doing it. So 15 minutes a day, 5 minutes of scripture, 5 minutes of prayer, and 5 minutes of silence. Which is really hard, but it's so good for you. All right. Do we think that that's something that we can do at any stage of life? Girls, do you think that you can sit in silence for 5 minutes a day? Yeah? Awesome. I want you to try it tomorrow. Tell Father Dimitri how it goes, and then he'll tell me. Yeah.
Okay, right now,
Go ahead.
if I have something to work on while being silent.
Okay.
Prayerful silence.
So, prayerful silence. So that means not having any other distractions. It means just sitting and praying and focusing on God.
Try it.
Awesome. You do it all the time. You know, out of the mouth of
I do
babes.
it all the time.
Okay. So since you're already so good at that, I want you to add 5 minutes of reading your Bible. Okay. And maybe 5 minutes of prayer with your families.
Okay.
Awesome.
Out loud?
Okay.
Out loud?
So
Sure.
put that in perspective. If we were tithing us, because we're not supposed to just tithe our money, we're supposed to tithe with our time, which means that every day, 2.4 hours is supposed to be given to God. So
Wow.
2.4 hours is
That's
what we're supposed to
otherwise-
do. That's the bar. Can't we give 15?
Yeah.
Can't we give 15 minutes?
Well, and I think, you know, part of what I'm trying to do, and you're intelligent people, and, you know, you're the ones here on Wednesday night. I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but I think it's good for all of us sometimes to take a step back and put these things in perspective, because I know I certainly, as a professional and as a mom and as a volunteer, like sometimes it just feels like there's no time, but you know, there really is. Okay. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on prayer tonight. We just talked about how in 15 minutes you can improve your personal prayer life. But the one thing I want to say about corporate or communal prayer is that there are lots of services during Lent that we can all come to. And again, you're the ones who are here, so I don't need to tell you that. You know that. But there are a lot of people who aren't here and who aren't experienced the beauty of these Lenten services, or they don't understand them, or they feel too busy too. So I would challenge everyone in this room to bring a friend, right? Or even just talk to a friend about what it was like to come to liturgy in the middle of the week and how that hopefully improved your Lenten experience. You guys are near a lot of colleges. Do you have a college ministry? Yeah, I figured you would. I should have asked you in advance, but let's bring a college student to church. I am so grateful that my son, who goes to school in St. Louis, is close to a parish, and that is exactly what they do. They have completely adopted the students at both WashU and St. Louis University, and he gets a ride. So that's my charge, yeah.
What does communal mean for the young kid?
Ooh, good question.
What does that mean?
Community.
What does the word communal mean?
Community?
Community, that's exactly what it means. Doing things together, right? Like you three are a nice little community, and you three are a nice little community. There's four. Oh, there's another one. Sorry. That's right. There were 4 altar boys, and you're all here. By the way, I was thrilled to see altar boys. Middle of the week. I know it's a school night. I'll try and hurry up so you can still get home and get your homework done. But
I was doing my own personal Snoopy dance. I was thrilled.
I bet you were. I bet you were. You were very happy to have them here. All right. All right, so we're going to move on. All right, so we've talked about almsgiving and prayer. Now we're going to talk about fasting. So let's start with why we fast. And I think that St. John Chrysostom says it better than anyone. He says, when we do without food, we are reminded that the only true and lasting source of joy is spiritual. So we're to break our attachment to material things in order to depend on spiritual things. And the second thing he says is that we fast to express solidarity with the poor. And I'm going to read this because I think it's so amazing. He says, if we are truly to show compassion to the poor, we must experience within our own bodies the consequences of poverty. Fasting is thus an incentive toward generosity, and the money saved during a fast can readily be given to relieve the enforced hunger of others. You guys get that? Understand what that means? So if you feel hungry because your mom didn't make you a burger and just gave you peanut butter again, it really does make you stop and think, oh gosh, I have a lot and there are other people who don't. What can I do to help them? Right? All right. I want to share a quote from really one of my all-time favorite books on fasting that is not written by an Orthodox Christian, but written by a woman who really captures the essence of what fasting means in a book called 7, An Experimental Mutiny Against Excess. I put the reference on your book. But what she says is, if a fast doesn't include any sacrifices, then it's not a fast. The discomfort is where the magic happens. Life zips along unchecked and automatic. We default to our lifestyle, enjoying our privileges, tra-la-la. But a fast interrupts that rote trajectory. Jesus gets a fresh platform in the empty space where indulgence has resided. It makes us hyper-aware, super sensitive to the Spirit. I just love that. It just really captures the idea that if we just slow down and allow some reflection and let that discomfort be okay so that we grow from it, we will grow closer to Christ. All right, so let's get down to brass tacks. And what are the guidelines for fasting? These are those severe guidelines I mentioned earlier, right? We start with no meat, no animal products, and that includes dairy, eggs, and lard, no fish with a backbone, no olive oil or wine. I once heard Metropolitan Wear say, eat only what comes from the ground, right? So if you're in the grocery store trying to figure out whether something's Lenten or not, think to yourself, did this at least originate in the ground? Yeah, questions?
Does that mean backbone by like a fish with a bone?
Yes. So, have you ever seen a fish get deboned before? Have you ever seen a whole fish? Right. So the bone was out of it. You need to ask your priest. You need to ask your priest if the bone is already out when it serves you. Does that count? Okay, Father Dimitri, really? Here and then here, yeah.
Well, if we go to church and we have the line of God or Jesus, so why do we drink it?
Oh, that's a great question. What about communion communion wine because communion wine isn't really wine anymore, right? It's Jesus' body. Great question. Did you have a question?
Because it's the weekend.
Because it's the weekend. It wasn't the weekend tonight. Okay. Did you want to ask your question or say it?
Does that mean like all that is like if you're a vegan? Or?
It is essentially a vegan diet, right? Right. Absolutely.
Real quick interjection, does everyone know why no olive oil or wine? Because I get that question a lot.
Great. Answer.
I heard it was because of the skins or the olives were stored.
That's what I had heard, yep.
Is it only olive oil? Because
No.
And for that reason, right?
I don't know. I heard a more organic answer. So is that more natural? It's really so that the food doesn't taste really good. I mean, like for instance, if you take the labia de faques, it tastes not very. It's supposed to so that you don't think that the food that you're eating is tasty. Really.
Or rich,
Or
maybe.
rich, exactly.
Right.
Like for instance, I have this, the monk will remain unnamed. He's like, oh, this is great. We just use sunflower oil and da-da-da-da-da. And then I met a Syrian man who were fasting. And I said, oh, it's great. Let's just use sunflower oil. It's great. He's like, no, it's not because it's not about the oil. It's so that the food isn't so rich, as you say, so that we want more, or we think about
Right.
God, and we don't think about the food.
Right.
This
Right,
is a nice
exactly.
interpretation
Yeah.
of it. The strictness of it is because
Right.
of the schemes, because
Right.
they were stored in animal skins.
Right.
Now, of course, just like with everything else, like in Manichaea, they came about because priests with long sleeves were knocking over the chalice. Now it's power and wisdom. So yes, we have added in the beautiful symbolism of so that it doesn't taste good, so that it's lesser, but the
The
strictness of it.
historical reason.
Right, because that's why you sometimes see in monasteries, and monasteries are as strict as they come, you'll see them having Lenten pizza, Lenten lasagna,
Really? With what?
basically tofu products.
Yeah. All right, well, we're going to talk about that too later. Okay, good. And also think about quantity, right? And as we were just saying, is the Chinese all-you-can-eat buffet really fasting? I'm not so sure. All right. All right, so how do you apply those guidelines, right? First of all, going back to what we talked about earlier, you start where you are and you increase, right? So if you usually fast from meat on Wednesdays and Fridays all year, fast from meat all of Lent, and not just on Wednesdays and Fridays. If you are already accustomed to fasting from meat during Lent, try dairy this year. Keep adding and increasing, and certainly talk with your parish priest or your spiritual father, if it's not your parish priest, about how to fast for where you are at your point in life.
And on that note, I was just going to throw in a lot of our kids have allergies, and
Right.
older adults can't eat everything. So please speak to Father about any and all health conditions at whatever stage of life they're in.
Absolutely.
Don't self-medicate and hurt yourself.
No, it's not intended for that purpose. And that's why I left talking about food for last, because we always put it first. I think maybe because, well, we all like to eat, and it's easy to focus on. But certainly if you have a health condition, if you're pregnant and nursing, I mean, things need to be adapted. All right. Second, again, think of your Lenten practices as both personal and communal. And I'm going to share advice from my parish priest. If Father Dimitri, I don't know if you'll have the same opinion, because there is sometimes a little variation, but the advice I heard, which I thought made a lot of sense, especially for families, from him, was fast to the lowest common denominator when you're fasting communally, right? So if you have your aging parent living with you, if you have a young picky eater in your house, it doesn't mean make burgers. It means make one meal that everyone can enjoy together and adapt it however you can so that you can maintain your fast. But don't get all bent out of shape if, there's some cheese on something, right? Because your kid will only eat cheese, and that is the only thing you can ever feed your kid. You don't want to make yourself crazy with the cooking 5 different things, and that again is when you're fasting communally in your family or with friends. But then when you're alone, then your fast is personal, and then you fast according to the strictness that you have worked out with your priest or spiritual father. Does that make sense? Does that fit with everyone's experience? Okay. And then to the next thing I want to do, in the spirit of KISS, keep it simple, stupid. There's a lot of people in this room. I'm sure we all have our favorite Lenten meals, right? So wouldn't it be great if we all told each other what our favorite Lenten meals are, and then you write them down. So what I'd like to do is come up with maybe 14, right? So 2 weeks worth of Lenten meals, ideas that are easy, that are not expensive, that we can all jot down and have a renewed list for our Lent this year. So what's everyone's favorite thing? I'll start. Tacos, right? You can put anything in a taco or a burrito and call it dinner, just skip the cheese and skip the sour cream, right? Rice, beans, cilantro, salsa, all good stuff. How about you? What do you think?
Spinach and rice.
Spinach and rice, pane chorizo. Yep. Awesome.
Taco Bell is the best for vegan.
Yeah.
Vegan fast food option.
Right. Taco Bell.
You get beans and you get guacamole, and they do it for you.
And rice. Absolutely. What else? What's your favorite Lenten meal? Salad. Absolutely. Without the dressing? What do you put on your salad?
I don't know. Mom makes it best.
Did she make the salad tonight? It was delicious. I enjoyed it.
So normally during Lent, what I put on my salad is salt, pepper, and vinegar.
Great. What do you put in your lunchbox?
We put bread. For me, my mom would usually put bread, some black fruit, and we sometimes put a bunch of chips.
That's a treat on Fridays, right? That's what I used to do. Get a treat on Fridays. What other meal ideas?
Lentil soup.
Lentil soup, which also can be frozen.
It's a staple in my house.
You can make a big pot and freeze some too, which
How
is
about
great.
yummy stuff? Yummy stuff?
What is that?
Oh, stuffed peppers?
Oh, stuffed peppers, yes, with rice and maybe chickpeas or something. What else?
Not the super cheap, but shrimp creole.
Shrimp creole. Yeah, you can go light on the shrimp. They put it on sale, right? What else? I'm not hearing 14. I see ladies in the back.
Pasta.
Pasta.
Pasta with marinara sauce.
Absolutely. So there's a really wonderful book. I have it in my bag. It's called Fasting as a Family. And the author, I think her name is Melissa Nasco, she talks about having 5 crisis meals. And she calls them crisis meals, not because you're in crisis, but because, oh my gosh, I'm running late. I didn't get to the grocery store. The kids have to get to soccer. What do I feed them? It's Lent. I can't go by the McDonald's. I can't order the pizza. It's a crisis, right? So I think we all have to have 5 things that we can get on the table in 10 minutes, either out of what's in our cupboards or something that we make ahead and have in our freezers. So what are your crisis meals?
Peanut butter and jelly.
Peanut butter and jelly, of course. We all have that. What about you?
Sometimes my mom makes salad of just tomatoes and cucumbers.
When that's all you have. Well, you can always have salad, but what do you have into the store? What about you?
Maybe quick mac and cheese or something.
Mac and cheese without the cheese, maybe. Okay, yeah.
Oh, noodles. But,
Noodles?
Carrots and hummus.
Carrots and hummus, of course. All right. So what you don't know about me is that my family's from the Middle East, and I am a hummus queen. Now, here's a secret. You can freeze hummus. You can make it from scratch and freeze it, and it freezes beautifully. Okay, that's my food tip for the day. For me, it's marinara sauce and spaghetti. I always have a jar. I don't love it, but that's all right. And I can have that on the table. But I think my point here is that if we plan ahead and just have a few things that we know we can rely on, again, we're keeping it simple. And we can follow through. Okay. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about non-food fasts. Now, as Orthodox, we don't give up something for Lent, right? We fast, and we fast as a community. We don't just give up chocolate or give up TV or whatever. We fast from the specific foods like I've already talked about. But I want to address the possibility of non-food fasts as something you can do in addition to, not instead of, the dietary fast. And some ideas for non-food fasting, as I have up there, are fasting from television, radio and music, social media, video games, gossip, and complaining. Yeah. Let me share a little bit about what has happened to me actually the last 2 years, which exemplifies, I think, the need for non-food fasts, at least for me. And actually, something happened last year, and then the exact same thing happened yesterday. So 2 years in a row now, I said to myself, I'm going to get off Facebook. Maybe not completely during Lent, but I'm not going to look at it except once in the morning. Great. So I was off to a good start, both last year and this year. The same thing happened. A day and a half into Lent, my Facebook newsfeed explodes with news stories and commentaries about issues that are relevant to my children, right? So the mommy in me goes down the rabbit hole, right? So last year, it was that at my son's college, a student was found with all these automatic weapons in his frat house. Okay? It was awful, right? So second day of Lent, after saying I'm not going to go on Facebook, I am spending all this time reading about gun control and gun laws in Missouri, and talking with other parents on the Wash U Parents Facebook group and all this stuff. Crazy. All right. I took Facebook off my phone at that point and didn't put it back on the rest of Lent. What happened yesterday? Similar situation. No guns, but these stories exploded about the FBI busting all of these rich celebrities for this college admissions scandal. Did you guys hear about this? Yeah. Okay. Well, I have a son who's a senior in high school, and he's applying to colleges, and he applied to a couple of elite schools. So naturally, that grabbed my attention again and again. I lost an afternoon on stuff that I couldn't control any of it. I expended this anxious energy doing really nothing, right? It did nothing. I couldn't control what was happening out there, and I got absorbed. I took Facebook off my phone again. So the point being, you may not all have the same problem, of course, but we do know from statistics that people are spending 2 hours a day on social media. So I think that is a good place to start with getting off the social media. All right. So let's talk about how to add a digital fast to your Lent. First, what you can do is evaluate your current screen use. Are you all aware of the new screen time monitor with the latest iOS update, or the one that came out in the fall? So you can have, your phone is keeping track of what you're doing, basically, whether you realize it or not. And you can start by looking at it. Go home tonight, open up this screen time monitor. If you don't have an iPhone, I believe Android has something similar. I'm sorry, I forgot what it's called. Somebody have an Android, know what it's called, the monitors? But you can go home and look at it and see how much time you're spending on your phone, and then set a goal for decreasing it, all right? The next thing you can do to help you is turn off, if you have them on, turn off notifications and alerts. You can go into settings and turn off the notifications. Certainly do it for all your social media. And I would also recommend turning it off on, most of your news apps. If you have news apps that are blinking at you throughout the day, do you really care that much? Well, you're in Chicago. You probably do care about Chicago politics, but I think I got 5 news alerts today from Chicago stuff that I thought, oh, I don't need this, so I turned all my news apps off too. But I think that constant distraction is part of the reason why we're picking up our phones so much. Put your phone, set a goal for yourself that you're going to put your phone on silent at a certain time every evening, and not just at bedtime, right? Maybe decide that during Lent you're going to put it on silent at 6 o'clock every night, whatever works for you, when you get home from work or school. If you're worried about your kids, put your kids or your parents on emergency bypass, and you will hear from them even if your phone is on silent. All right. Consider abstaining from entertainment, websites, apps, and television. Limit internet use to strictly work and school. There's some debate. Orthodox sites are great. In fact, I have some suggestions for podcasts on the references, but try and limit that. Books are still better. Okay. Thoughts? Has anyone tried this? Again, am I speaking to the choir here?
No, this is really good ideas. I haven't thought of these.
Good, okay, good. I'm glad it's helpful for you. Has anyone ever tried to turn the TV or the video games off during Lent? You have? Man, you guys are the power players. I want to be friends with your mom, I think.
Yeah.
Have you tried? Not to put you on the spot.
They
but
don't, it's not allowed during the school week anyway, so that was just her question if that counts. And I said, well, I think it's more about you giving up something that you typically do.
Well, it's also about not just giving up, but sort of reorienting your focus, right? So it's not only about the sacrifice, although we know that's part of it. It's about freeing yourself up from all these worldly cares so that we can focus on our relationship with Christ and with each other through our good works. How about you guys? You're probably a no TV and no video games during Lent family, aren't you?
He's got a question.
Yeah, who has a question? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you over there.
So on Saturday I had a babysitter, and I turned off my brother's computer while he was playing on it.
You turned off the computer, you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh, because were you not supposed to have the computer on?
No, we were allowed to, but he didn't.
Sounds like you need to fast from pranking people.
All of our Sunday school students will be going to confession during right now. No, I was just gonna say, I can't tell everybody how much this comes up. I do pediatrics as well, and so and adult medicine, but the digital use is huge. And none of the kids here probably, but older kids especially, when I ask them about they'll be failing a class, and it turns out actually that they're not sleeping at all. And the reason they're not sleeping at all is because they have their phone in their room.
Right.
So if there's one thing that I would add is if you can charge your phone out of your room, so that it's not the first thing you pick up in the morning. I know I have that bad habit. So that's one thing. And then what you said before about 5 minutes of silence, I think is that's definitely my problem. I find that I'm filling the time, even if it's with Lenten things, it's still filling your brain, right? So what you said about Orthodox websites, I'll just go to this instead of something else. Right. I'm still just distracting myself.
Exactly. And when you're sitting with a book, like an actual book with pages, paper, there's less distraction, right? Nothing's going to bling at you. So while I appreciate reading on a Kindle or an iPad or whatever, there's always that underlying distraction. So yeah, I agree.
tab and like look at or like whatever.
And I want to underscore what you said, because that's something I tell parents all the time, and we do it in our house as well. No screens in the bedroom ever. Do your homework out in the open, and that's not just a Lent thing. That's a health situation, as you're affirming. What do you mean?
Or like, what if you did it all?
That's great. You still don't bring a screen into the bedroom. Okay. All right. We're going to talk about another completely different kind of fast, and that's a complaining fast. Have you heard about, this was a popular trend a couple of years ago. It was started by a minister named Will Bowen, who wrote a book called The Complaint-Free World. And in it, he kind of outlined how you can give up complaining for 21 days in order to be happier, right? And well, I like happy, that's good, but that's not really the only purpose to it. But consider taking the challenge of not complaining during Lent. Just try it for one day, okay? No complaining, blaming, or justifying for all of Lent, or at least today. I had a client tell me yesterday, in fact, that she was giving up self-pity for Lent. And I think that kind of falls under complaining, right? If you catch yourself complaining, and you will, because we all will, you have to put a quarter in a jar. And then at the end of Lent, hopefully you don't have too many quarters, or maybe you do, and you donate that many. It helps to enlist a buddy to be your accountability partner and point out to you if, oh, you're complaining again, stop you. And then put systems in place to remember, oh yeah, I'm not supposed to complain. Put sticky notes around, right? So if you're not complaining, what are you doing? What are you doing instead? You're giving gratitude, giving thanks. So what you can do is take little slips of paper, and every day write down one thing that you're grateful for, and save those slips of paper in a jar. And then throughout Lent, when you're feeling discouraged, you pull those little slips out and you reflect on all the things that you're grateful for. You can do the same thing with the journal. And because St. John Chrysostom knew it all and never fails me and always has the wisdom, what he said was, happiness can only be achieved by looking inward and learning to enjoy whatever life has, and this requires transforming greed into gratitude. So even though now we have scientific studies on how gratitude can improve mood and depression, St. John, he knew it. He knew it back then. All right. Okay. So I know there's often a lot of questions that come up about fasting, and far be it from me to be the one to stand here and answer them, because I think we all have questions about Lent, and because the internet is so accessible, there's Facebook groups and there's websites, it's easy to go elsewhere to get our information, but really at the end of the day, when we have a question about our fasting, we ought to be asking our priest. So I came up with some questions that I think are kind of hard, at times to answer. These are mine, but I'm going to ask Father Dimitri to come up here and join me. And I'd like to just let this be an opportunity for you all to ask whatever questions you have about fasting. So, does anyone have questions? Otherwise, I've got some to stump them with, maybe. Yeah?
What age should you start fasting at?
That's a great question. What age should you start fasting at?
So my general answer that I give to parents when, and this is not just a Lenten thing, this is like during the week, because I've had parents tell me that, my child's going to die if he doesn't have eggs Sunday morning. Exactly. I think there are children starving in third world countries that haven't eaten in a week that would beg to differ that fasting for 2 hours is going to cause you that much discomfort. My feeling of that is when the child understands, then you can start talking to the child about it. And fasting should be a way of life. So it's not something that's supposed to be just a radical tonal shift. And I think this is the problem that some of us see with Great Lent in general, is that if we look at the dietary habits of the Israelites and the early Christians, they didn't have access to a lot of meat. They didn't have access to a lot of wine or oil. They didn't have a lot of access to dairy even. So what were they eating? They were eating basically a vegan diet of vegetables. And that was what they ate. And so Lent took on a connotation not of a radical tonal shift, but a lessening of everything. Exercising self-control. To basically saying, you know what? Instead of eating 10 bites for the food, I'll eat 8. So I'm just a little bit hungry. Just a little bit hungry. It makes you sharper. Fasting is all about self-control. And so what I would say is when a child is able to exercise self-control or learn about self-control in anything, then that's the time for that child to start learning about how to fast for himself or herself. Prior to that, that child might not even realize that he or she has been fasting already because it's been part of their life, because their parents have already been doing it. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Beautiful.
Great. Other questions?
I would have a question, but not about fasting.
What is it about?
Like,
Because we're not answering Fortnite questions right now.
like for a long time ago, like how was someone born if they didn't have like a parent? Like was they created?
In other words, Adam and Eve, how were they created?
Yeah.
So Adam and Eve were created according to Genesis out of the clay. That God created them. Everything else he said, be, and it was. But he made Adam and Eve. And that was the first of all humanity. Good questions, guys.
Other questions about fasting?
Did you answer that first one, Father, the one that's on there?
I think it's a good question.
It's a great question.
So this is one of those things that is, if you ask an Orthodox priest, and an Orthodox priest tells you, no, this is the way it has to be, then he's wrong. There are multiple ways of doing this. What I would say, and the doctor told us earlier in the presentation, ask your priest before you do something. In other words, if your priest tells you absolutely not, in other words, no margarine, no canola oil, no sunflower oil, then guess what? You don't do it. Out of obedience to what your priest has prescribed for your personal Lenten journey, you do that. If your priest tells you, yes, you may use soy products, you may use alternative oils, then you know what? You may do that. The most important thing for us to do as Christians is to pay attention to what St. Paul said when looking at the fasting regimen of another person. That is between them and God. You don't know what dietary restrictions another person has. You don't know whether they have to eat meat because of part of their diet, because of something going on. Our job as Christians is to assume that that individual is under the canona, the instruction of his spiritual father to do that, unless they ask you and say, what should I be doing? And then you can say, well, these are the general rules, but I would urge you to go talk to your priest. This is very important because as another doctor in our audience said, different families have different allergies. We have a family in our parish that because of certain allergies, that one child cannot fast the way we want the child to fast. And so they have done a different lifestyle during the fast for that child. So they are fasting in a way of speaking, but without making that child feel different or not normal, because that child cannot participate in the fast like everybody else. Does that make sense, Jason?
Yes.
You talk about like spending time with family or friends when they invite you over and they're not fasting, maybe they're Christian, maybe they're not, how you're supposed to deal with that.
So the way you deal with that is if they ask you and say, what would you like to serve, us to serve? You can say, well, you know what, I'm fasting, so this, that, and the other. If, however, they invite you over and you come to their house, and suddenly they've got porterhouses on the table, that is not an opportunity to say, oh, I will be defiled if I eat that. As St. Paul said, it is not unlawful for you to do anything. Is it beneficial? Not always. But the reality is you're not supposed to call attention to your fast. You're supposed to eat what they put in front of you, smile, and go on your way, and not shame the other Christian. Your job as an Orthodox Christian is to be the icon, the model for them to follow. So yes, if someone invites you to their house, they didn't ask you what to have, then yes, you basically eat what they put in front of you.
But don't have seconds. I used to have to tell that to my kids. Okay, they may serve you hot dogs, but one. It doesn't mean you get to have 5 hot dogs. Right.
Well, and what Dr. Randa said is also pertinent because, some people say, well, I'm eating fasting, so I'm having pasta. But you're having 5 plates of pasta. Well, that again has eliminated the point of the fast. The other thing about the fast that sometimes people get into problems with, and I'm sure, Doctor, you get this a lot, is they're not eating appropriately. They're eating fasting food, but because they're not eating the appropriate things, if they're just eating pasta every single night, and people say, oh, why am I so irritable during Great Lent? It's because you're not getting enough vitamins. You're not eating right.
Right.
I thought another interesting point to make is, you're fasting, and technically lobsters, scallops, shrimp, those things are all fasting friendly. But again, we're looking at the spirit of the fast. It's not to have super rich foods, and I think it's okay. Of course, you're going to have shrimp, you're going to have things, but just to not, to go overboard with having these sumptuous feasts. It's the same principle as, in a sense, like the pasta. You're trying to have a really rich meal, and I think that's something that we're.
Well, let's take it a step further, because the meat, when they say don't eat meat, when were the Israelites eating meat? When the prodigal son came back, the father said, kill the fatted calf, and they had a party, which meant that the only time you were eating meat was at parties. So essentially, what is the ipso facto telling you during fasting periods? No partying. Don't party. Make it less. We're not supposed to gorge on these things. Shellfish was available, so they ate it. And it was able to follow these fasting rules. But again, if we lose the spirit of the fast, it loses its meaning. St. John Chrysostom said very well, it does me very little good to consume only bread and drink only water if in turn I devour my brother and sister.
Other questions?
So have we covered what's on the list there?
Traveling. What about fasting when you travel?
Yeah.
All right, so that's one of those things where by the law, no. But let's also look at the spirit of the law. When you were traveling back in the day when that law was written, you were actually walking, moving, expending energy. Sitting at O'Hare Airport is not the same thing.
Right. Also, nowadays, there are options when you're traveling. So yeah, you have to eat out. Okay, have the veggie sandwich. It's not that hard. It doesn't really justify having the turkey sandwich.
So with that, I would like to thank Dr. Randa for coming and edifying us with this amazing talk. We'd also like to thank the Sunday School for providing us with this fantastic meal tonight. It was absolutely delicious.
Yeah, I have one more slide.
Oh, you have one more slide. Oh,
yeah, but
goodness.
it's just a great quote to leave you with.
Ooh.
This is from Cheese Fair Thursday Matins. The grace of abstinence has shone forth, banishing the darkness of demons. The power of the fast disciplines our minds. Lent brings the cure to our crippling worldliness. I love that.
I love that
crippling
too.
Worldliness.
That is beautiful. Well, Rhonda, when you had said that you had never been to St. Basil before, we wanted to give you a little gift.
Oh, thank you.
On behalf of our parish. Thank you for coming and speaking to us. And
must be an icon of sequence. Thank you.
So we are very, very grateful. And the kids, I'm so happy that you were here. Not only that you were here, but that you participated in such a wonderful way.
Yeah, thank you. Thrilled that you guys were here.
Now, I know that Sunday school was supposed to be here tonight, but I encourage the kids, if they want, come often. This is a lot of fun every single week.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was beautiful.
Yeah, I'm glad the kids were able to
that.
participate.
You guys did an amazing job reading. You were fantastic.